That's how long I'd been playing the part. 3 years of morning texts, carefully timed to land exactly when she woke up. 3 years of memorizing her menstrual cycle, more reliable than her mood, I'll tell you that. 3 years of learning every single recipe for stomach-soothing broth because her digestive system had the resilience of wet tissue paper. It was the longest, most well-compensated acting job of my life. And today, the curtain finally came down. My wife stood in the middle of our penthouse living room, her voice flat and cold as a frozen lake. You need to understand your position. Don't get any ideas. Beside her stood the man I'd been paid to keep away for 3 years, her one that got away. He looked me up and down like I was a stain on his shoe that needed scraping off. So you're the replacement? He let out a laugh that was pure condescension. Not much to look at. I've seen better looking dogs. I almost laughed out loud. The guy's face had so much foundation caked on, I could have scraped it off and used it for spackle. We were all standing there like actors in a badly written play. Me, my soon-to-be ex-wife, her precious white knight, and her younger sister, who'd somehow gotten caught up in this circus. Jack, let's go, the sister said, grabbing my arm. We don't need to be here. Emily, 23, brash, and apparently the only person in this family with a functioning moral compass. She was trying to drag me out the door, her face flushed with genuine anger on my behalf. I didn't move. Instead, I turned to the happy couple and gave them the most genuine smile I'd managed in 3 years. Actually, I've been waiting for this moment. Don't let me interrupt your reunion. And hey, I pulled out my phone and waved it. Divorce papers? I'm available 24/7. Their faces went blank, like someone had pulled the plug on their little drama. This wasn't how the script was supposed to go. I was supposed to fall apart, beg, plead, make a scene. Sorry, but I'd been rewriting this ending for 3 years. Emily practically shoved me into her car, a ridiculously expensive convertible that she definitely didn't need at 23. What the hell was that? She floored the accelerator, and the penthouse disappeared behind us. You're just okay with this? I stretched out in the passenger seat, feeling lighter than I had in years. I've been okay with it since day one, Emily. She hired me to play a role. The contract's up. Wait, hired you? I tapped my temple. Think about it. All those perfect gestures? The carefully timed texts. I didn't fall in love with her. I did a job. She was quiet for a long moment. Then, slowly, a grin spread across her face. You're serious? You've been faking it this whole time. Every single second. She let out a laugh that was half disbelief, half delight. I've been feeling sorry for you for 3 years. 3 years. And you are just collecting a paycheck. One that's about to get a lot bigger, by the way. $1 million payout, plus a penthouse in the city's best building. All in the contract. Emily pulled the car over suddenly, right in the middle of the street. You're telling me my sister signed a contract that pays you $1 million to walk away? Tell me again why you're defending her. For a second, she looked almost hurt. Then she was laughing again, shaking her head. I'm not defending her. I'm just amazed she's that stupid. Emily threw the car back into gear and took off again, this time heading toward the city center. You need a drink. Or 10. I'm taking you somewhere to celebrate. You're a menace, I said, but I was smiling. For the first time in 3 years, it was real. Silver Mirror, she announced, pulling up to the most exclusive spa in the city. I booked out the whole place. No one else, just us. Your family's money really does come in handy. She grinned. It's not all bad. Inside, the place was all soft lighting, plush robes, and the kind of hushed opulence that made you forget the world outside existed. We settled into private rooms, and I let myself sink into the massage chair, warm water soaking my feet, exhaustion finally catching up with me. So, Emily said, lounging across from me, a champagne flute in her hand. What was it like? 3 years of pretending to love my sister. I closed my eyes. You know what the hardest part was? Not the acting. The acting was easy. IT was the little things, remembering her coffee order. Making sure her stomach didn't betray her after every meal. Keeping track of her family's birthdays. That sounds like caring. That sounds like good job performance. I corrected. I was thorough. That's all. She stared at me for a long moment, something unreadable in her expression. You really never felt anything? Not even a little? I opened my eyes and met her gaze. Emily, she brought another man into our home on our anniversary. She told me I was just a placeholder, and I felt relief. That's not how you feel about someone you love. Whatever she'd been looking for, she seemed to find it. She raised her glass. To new beginnings, then. I clinked my glass against hers. Somewhere between the second drink and the fourth, the world started swimming. I remember Emily laughing at something I said. I remember her leaning in closer, her voice soft in my ear. I remember her hand on my chest, warm and insistent. After that, things got fuzzy. And then the door crashed open. What the hell is this? My ex-wife's voice cut through the haze like a blade. I forced my eyes open. The room was spinning, but I could make out 2 figures standing in the doorway, my wife and her new pet project. Emily was scrambling off me, face flushed, clothes rumpled. Emily, what are you doing? My ex demanded. You don't go to places like this with someone else's husband. He's not your husband anymore, Emily shot back, straightening her shirt. You made that pretty clear. The man beside my ex, David, I finally remembered his name, stepped forward with that condescending smirk still plastered on his face. I told you, sweetheart, some people just can't help their nature. They drag everyone down with them. Shut your mouth, Emily snapped. You don't get to come in here and act like you're better than anyone. My ex put a hand on David's chest. Don't. It's not worth it. I don't want to be worth it, Emily said, crossing her arms. What I want is for the two of you to leave us alone. But David wasn't done. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a checkbook, making a show of scribbling something down. Here's the thing, Mr. Understudy, I know about the contract. You were paid to keep me away, and now your job's done. So here's a little extra. He tore off a check and held it out. 500,000, I consider it a severance package. Take it and disappear. I stared at the check. 500,000. Our contract was for $1 million. David, you're not helping, my ex said, but it was half-hearted. She was watching me, waiting to see what I'd do. I took the check from his hand, felt the paper between my fingers. Then I tore it in half. And half again. And again. I don't think you two understand the situation, I said, standing up. The room swayed, but I forced myself to stay steady. First, our contract says $1 million cash, plus a penthouse downtown. Your math is creative, but it's also wrong. My ex's face went pale. Second, I turned to her directly. You think I wanted this? You think I was hoping to stay? I've been counting down the days until I could walk away. You hired an actor, and you got a performance worth every penny you paid for it, but don't mistake performance for reality. David's smirk had vanished. You're just a hired hand. I'm a hired hand with a contract. I cut him off. And I'm a hired hand with copies of that contract stored in 3 different places. If you think you can walk away without paying, you're going to find out exactly how messy I can make this. I pulled out my phone, tapping the screen. I've got the wedding photos, the contract scans, email logs going back 3 years, all of it scheduled to go out if I don't check in every 3 days. You try anything stupid, and the whole world gets to see exactly how your company's CEO treats the people who keep her secrets. My ex's face was white. David's jaw was tight. You can't blackmail us, he managed. I'm not blackmailing anyone. I'm making sure I don't get screwed over. I set the torn pieces of the check on the table. That's called covering your ass. You should try it sometime. They left. Not gracefully. Not without David sputtering threats about lawyers. Not without my ex promising that this wasn't over. But they left. Emily was staring at me with wide eyes. Holy shit, Jack. That was necessary, I finished. And I have a headache. She was still staring. You actually did it. You made them back down. I made them think about the consequences. There's a difference. I sank back onto the massage table, but I could use some water, and maybe a quiet 5 minutes. Emily handed me a bottle. You know, I've been watching you for 3 years. I never really figured you out. Good. That means I was doing my job. She laughed, but I noticed she didn't move away. The last thing I remember before passing out was her hand on my forehead, brushing hair out of my eyes, and her voice, soft in my ear. You're going to be okay, Jack. I promise. The next morning, my phone buzzed with a bank notification. $1 million. Transferred. And then a real estate agent called about the penthouse keys. I stood at the window of my new home that evening, watching the city lights flicker to life below. 20 floors up. Floor-to-ceiling glass. A private pool on the rooftop. 3 years of pretending, and it had all paid off. Literally. I pulled up my contacts and found my mother's number. She'd been right from the start, but I hadn't wanted to hear it. I should have listened. You'll be fine, she'd said at the wedding, her eyes worried. And if you're not, you know where home is. I wasn't fine yet, but I was getting there. I posted a quick photo on social media. The view from the living room, the city sprawling below. Finally free. Who wants to come over and christen the place? Within seconds, Emily's name popped up in the comments. I know this place. I'll be there in an hour to celebrate properly. Winking face. I laughed and typed back the address. Some things were about to get complicated. I just didn't know how complicated yet. Emily showed up at my door 2 hours after I sent that address, dragging a pink suitcase that looked like it belonged to a teenager on spring break. You're actually here, I said, stepping aside. Did you think I was joking? She rolled the suitcase past me like she owned the place, then stopped dead in the middle of my empty living room, spinning in a slow circle. Jesus, Jack. This view. My sister gave you this. Contractually obligated. She didn't have a choice. Emily dropped onto the floor, legs crossed, and cracked open a beer from the 6-pack she'd brought. Best decision she ever made. Giving you this place, I mean, worst decision was everything else. I took a beer and sat across from her. So, what happened after you left the spa? Did they actually go through with it? Oh, they went through with it. She took a long pull. They were at the courthouse the next morning. Marriage license. The whole show. Dad tried to talk her out of it, but she wouldn't listen. She said David was her real partner, and we were all just jealous. I snorted. Jealous of what? His foundation addiction. Emily laughed, almost choking on her beer. Okay, that's good. But seriously, he's been a disaster since day one. Do you know what he did on their first night back? He tried to make her dinner. He didn't know she was allergic to soy, so he made this elaborate tofu dish. She ended up in the ER within an hour. She's been allergic to soy since she was 12. How does a fiancé not know that? Because he never asked. He just assumed. Emily shook her head. And then you'll love this. He found her old recipe binder in the kitchen. The one with all those stomach-soothing broths you used to make for her. He threw the whole thing in the trash. Said she was being dramatic and didn't need hand-holding. I felt a flicker of something, not sympathy, exactly. More like professional irritation. Those recipes took me months to perfect. She has gastritis. She can't just eat whatever. Yeah, well, she learned that the hard way 2 days after the tofu incident. He gave her some herbal supplements his cousin sold. First ingredient on the bottle, ginger extract, which is a known gastric irritant for people with her condition. She was in bed for 3 days, puking her guts out. I set my beer down, and she stayed with him? Emily's grin turned bitter. That's the thing about my sister. She'd rather be wrong with him than alone. She's got this idea that being married to the right person fixes everything, even when that person is actively making her sick. I processed that point 3 years of marriage, and I never cracked that particular code. Megan had always been opaque to me, cold, controlled, impossible to read. But Emily's words painted a picture of someone desperate enough to ignore reality. She's not stupid, I said slowly. She ran a billion-dollar company. She knows how to evaluate risk. She evaluates risk with money, Emily shot back. With people, she's blind. She sees what she wants to see. And what she wants to see is David as her savior, not some guy who can't even remember her allergies. I leaned back against the wall. So, what's the plan? You just watch her self-destruct. Emily's eyes met mine. Not watch. Document. I've been keeping notes. Every time he fucks up, every time she ignores it, I'm building a file. When she finally wakes up, if she wakes up, she's going to need proof of what he did. That's surprisingly strategic. I learned from the best. She lifted her beer in a toast. You spent 3 years playing the long game. I figured I could do the same. That night, Emily crashed on my couch that I didn't offer. She just grabbed a blanket from the hall closet and curled up like she belonged there. I didn't argue. The place was too big anyway, and the silence had been starting to feel heavy. The next few weeks, I threw myself into work. I'd had a plan brewing since month 6 of the marriage, back when I realized that pretending to love Megan was just a temporary gig. The real money, the real future, wasn't in her contract. It was in building something that couldn't be taken away. I started a media company, called it Phoenix Digital, because I liked the symmetry of rising from ashes. The concept was simple: recruit creators, give them better splits and actual legal support, and profit from their growth instead of squeezing them dry. Every other agency in the city treated talent like disposable batteries, that I treated them like partners. Within 3 months, we had 50 creators under contract. Within 6, we were the fastest growing MCN in the region. The numbers were climbing so fast I had to hire a CFO just to keep up with the tax implications. Emily became my unofficial morning brief. She'd show up at my office around 10, bagel in one hand, phone in the other, and give me the daily update on the Megan David disaster. He's officially a vice president now, she reported one Tuesday, kicking her feet up on my desk. Mom and Dad almost had a stroke. The board was furious, but Megan overrode all of them. Said he deserved a chance to prove himself. Prove himself at what? Running her company into the ground. Exactly that, actually. She pulled up a spreadsheet on her phone and turned it toward me. He's already replaced 3 department heads with his cousins: human resources, procurement, accounts payable. All his relatives. All collecting 6-figure salaries for jobs they barely know how to do. I looked at the list. That's not incompetence. That's a takeover play. You think he's trying to steal the company? I think he's trying to control the money flow so he can eventually squeeze Megan out. She's the CEO, but if he controls who gets paid and who approves expenses, she's a figurehead. I tapped the screen. Has she noticed? She's too busy planning their fairy tale wedding to notice anything. David's got her convinced they need a grand romantic gesture to solidify their love. He's planning some kind of live-streamed proposal event in 2 months. Full production, cameras, the works. I felt a cold certainty settle in my chest. He's going to use that event to do something. Something that shifts the narrative. Like what? Like make himself look like the hero, or make someone else look like the villain. I met her eyes. I'd bet anything he's going to try to blame me for something. Emily's face went pale. He wouldn't dare. He absolutely would. I'm a loose end. The ex-husband who knows too much and has no reason to keep quiet. If he can discredit me publicly, he removes the only witness who could expose his scheme. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "What do you need?" Information. Access. Whatever you can get without putting yourself at risk. I need to know who he's talking to outside the company. It took Emily 2 weeks to get me what I needed: a name, an email thread, and a phone number. David had been communicating with Sterling Industries, one of Megan's biggest competitors, not just casually. He'd been sending them internal documents, pricing models, even drafts of upcoming product launches. In exchange, they'd been giving him what looked like unofficial consulting fees through a shell company. I called the CEO of Sterling myself, a man named Harold Vance, known for being ruthless but not stupid. Phoenix Digital's founder, he said when I introduced myself. "I've heard of your work. What do you want?" "I want to offer you something. My entire network of creators. Free marketing for one of your flagship products for a full week. No cost. No strings, except one. Which is, I need you to turn over every communication you've had with David Morrison, emails, recordings, whatever you have. And I need you to attend his live proposal event and play along with whatever he's planning until I give the signal." Silence on the line, then a dry laugh. "David Morrison? The guy who's been feeding me his fiancé's trade secrets for 6 months? That David?" "The same. You're offering me a week of prime influencer marketing in exchange for throwing that idiot under the bus?" Another laugh. "Mr. Phoenix, I would have done it for free, but I'll take the deal. Check your email in 10 minutes. I spent the next week building my own counterplay. I knew exactly how David's mind worked now. He was going to stand on that stage, surrounded by cameras and guests, and accuse me of selling Megan's secrets to Sterling. He'd have some fabricated evidence, likely an email chain he created himself, and then he'd demand I be humiliated, arrested, whatever. The twist was that I had the real evidence, and I had Harold Vance ready to confirm, in real time, that the real traitor was David. But I also had something else. Something I hadn't told Emily yet. The night before the event, Emily showed up at my apartment with a bottle of whiskey and a look I couldn't read. "I'm nervous," she admitted. "Not for me. For you, if this backfires." "It won't." "How do you know?" I poured 2 glasses, because I've been watching David for 3 years. He's predictable, he's greedy, and he's arrogant enough to think everyone else is stupid. That makes him easy to beat. She took the glass but didn't drink. And what about my sister? When this all comes out, she's going to lose everything. Her company, her reputation, her marriage. She'll be a public joke. I looked at her. Emily, she chose this. She saw all the red flags and she painted them white. I'm not doing this to destroy her. I'm doing this to save myself. If David wins, I'm the one who ends up in handcuffs. I'm not going to let that happen. Emily was quiet. Then she raised her glass. Then let's make sure he loses. We clinked. And for the first time, I noticed she was looking at me differently. Not like a brother-in-law. Not like a friend. Like something else entirely. The event was held in a ballroom downtown. All chandeliers and velvet ropes. I arrived 20 minutes late on purpose, dressed in a suit I'd had tailored for the occasion. The moment I walked in, the energy shifted. Whispers. Glances. Someone near the bar muttered, "Can't believe he showed up." Megan's aunt approached me first, a sharp-faced woman who'd never liked me. "You have no right to be here. This is a celebration." "I'm celebrating," I said pleasantly. "Just not the same thing you are." David spotted me from across the room, and I watched his face cycle through surprise, anger, and then a kind of smug satisfaction. He thought he had me. He thought I was walking into his trap. He didn't know I'd already set my own. The proposal went exactly as planned. David got down on one knee. Megan cried. The crowd applauded. The cameras broadcasted it all. And then, right as David reached for the ring, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, smiled, and said, "I'm so sorry, everyone. This is urgent." Then he held up the phone like he was revealing a conspiracy. "I've just received evidence that my fiancé's ex-husband, Jack, has been selling proprietary company secrets to our rival, Sterling Industries." The crowd gasped. Megan's face went white. David turned to me, his voice dripping with practiced outrage. "How could you do this? You already got your payout. You got the penthouse. And still, you couldn't leave us alone." I waited until he finished. Then I reached into my jacket and pulled out my own phone. "You done?" I asked. "What are you?" "Because I have a few things to share, too." I tapped the screen, and a recording of David's voice filled the ballroom. "Don't worry, I've got the pricing models ready. Just send the consulting fee to the Cayman account like we discussed." The room went dead silent. Megan stared at David. He stared at the speakers mounted around the room, then back at me, his face draining of color. That's fabricated." "It's not," I said. "And I have the rest of the emails, the contracts, and a very helpful phone call from your friend Harold Vance, who's waiting backstage to confirm everything." I smiled. "David, you wanted to put on a show. Congratulations. You just headlined your own trial." The ballroom erupted. David's face cycled through 5 different shades of red before settling on a kind of splotchy, almost purple. He opened his mouth, closed it, then opened it again. No sound came out. Megan was staring at him like she'd never seen him before. Her eyes were wide, her hands trembling at her sides. A single tear rolled down her cheek, but she didn't wipe it away. She started. "David, what is he talking about?" "It's fake. It's all fake." His voice cracked on the second word. "He's lying. He must have hacked my phone. He's trying to destroy us." Then explain the voice. I held up my phone again, because I have 17 more recordings. Want me to play another one? I'm happy to play another one. David's head whipped around, scanning the room for an escape route, but there wasn't one. The crowd had closed in, a wall of expensive suits and judgmental stares. Someone was already recording on their phone. "You think this is over?" David's voice had shifted from righteous anger to something more desperate. "You think you've won? I have attorneys. I have. You have a shell company in the Caymans and a trail of emails I've already handed to the prosecutor's office." I tucked my phone away. "You're not walking out of here, David. You're walking into an interview room. The only question is whether you do it in handcuffs or not." David made a lunge for the exit. He didn't get far. A security guard half his size intercepted him and pinned him against the wall before he could take 2 steps. The crowd gasped again. Megan let out a sound that was half shriek, half sob. And then she crumpled. She went down hard, knees hitting the marble floor with a crack that made me wince. Her face had gone ghost white, and she was clutching her stomach like someone had just stabbed her. "He didn't know," she whispered, though no one was listening to her anymore. "He didn't know about the ginger. He didn't know about the soy. He just didn't know you?" I crouched down next to her, keeping my voice low so only she could hear. Or didn't care. She looked up at me, and for a moment, I saw something fragile behind all those layers of armor. A woman who had spent years hiding from the truth. "Jack, save it. I'm not the one you need to convince." Paramedics showed up a few minutes later. Someone had called them before the collapse. Maybe a strategic move, maybe just luck. Megan was wheeled out on a stretcher, pale and shaking, while David was cuffed and let out a different door. The ballroom emptied fast. The party was over, the cameras had stopped recording, and the witnesses were scattering like a flock of startled birds. Emily found me by the bar, where I'd retreated to collect myself. "Did you know she was going to collapse?" I shook my head. I knew she was stressed. I didn't know it would come out like that. Emily watched the paramedics load the stretcher into an ambulance. "She's going to spin this. You know she's going to blame you for embarrassing her in public, for making her look foolish, for..." "I don't care." She turned to look at me. "You don't." "I cared for 3 years, Emily. I did everything I could. I protected her from people who wanted to take advantage, and I made sure she ate when she couldn't eat, and I called her when she didn't want to talk. And the second someone else showed up with a better story, she replaced me like I was nothing." I took a long breath. "I'm done." Her expression softened. "Jack, don't. I don't need sympathy. I don't need anything from that family except the money. They already paid me." She reached out and put a hand on my arm. "You're not part of that family anymore." It should have felt like a comfort. Instead, it felt like the first real statement of truth I'd heard in 3 years. I spent the next week in a fog of legal meetings and damage control. The criminal investigation moved fast. David's emails were authentic. Harold Vance had provided everything, including records of the consulting payments. The prosecutor was confident they'd get a conviction on at least 3 counts: corporate espionage, fraud, and obstruction. The sentence would be significant. But Megan's world was crumbling in a different way. Her board of directors demanded her resignation. They cited gross negligence and lack of oversight, which was fair. Honestly, she let David hire 3 of his relatives into senior positions. She'd given him access to proprietary information. She'd ignored warnings from her own CFO. Her parents were publicly humiliated. Her mother stopped answering calls from anyone she didn't personally know. Her father, a man I'd always respected, even from a distance, released a statement expressing deep disappointment in both his daughter and the situation. And David's relatives? They'd fled the country within 48 hours. Their offices were empty, their company phones disconnected, their work emails forwarding to dead addresses. It was a complete collapse. Emily brought me all of this news and daily updates delivered over coffee at my office. Dad's been trying to get a hold of her for 3 days. She reported on Thursday. She won't answer. She won't call back. She's just holed up in her apartment with a bottle of something expensive, refusing to talk. She's processing. She's doing what she always does when she can't control things. She shuts down and waits for it to go away. Emily's voice was sharp. It's not going to go away. You want me to talk to her? She looked at me like I'd suggested I might start tap dancing. Would you? I thought about it. I don't think it would help. She needs to hear the truth from someone she can't blame. That's not me. But the truth came from a different direction entirely. 2 weeks after the ballroom, Megan's attorney sent me a letter. It wasn't a demand for money. That would have been pointless since I'd already cashed the payment from the contract. It wasn't a threat of legal action. David was already in custody, and any lawsuit he filed would come out of a jail cell. It was a request for an off-the-record meeting. I don't want to do this, I told Emily when I showed her the letter. She's trying to manipulate you. Probably. Then why are you even considering it? I set the letter down on the table between us, because I spent 3 years married to her, and I still don't understand her. I want to see what she says when she's got no one else to perform for. Emily studied me for a long moment. You're going to do it, aren't you? Tomorrow afternoon. Fine. But I'm coming with you. Megan looked like a different person when I saw her. The expensive clothes were gone, replaced by simple black leggings and a sweater that had seen better days. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and she had no makeup on at all. Her eyes were red-rimmed, and she seemed smaller than I remembered. Not physically, but somehow reduced. She was sitting at a cafe table near the back of the room, a cup of tea that looked untouched in front of her. I sat down across from her. Emily positioned herself at a table nearby, close enough to intervene but far enough to seem invisible. Jack. Megan's voice was hoarse. Thank you for coming. You said you wanted to talk. I did. She wrapped both hands around her teacup, like she was trying to absorb its warmth. I wanted to tell you that I've been a fool, that I should have listened to you, that I should have never brought David into our lives. Okay. That's all you have to say? I don't know what you want from me, Megan. You called, I came. Now you're telling me you made a mistake. I leaned forward. I'm not your therapist. I'm not your husband anymore. What do you actually need? She blinked, like she'd expected me to fall into some familiar pattern. I need to know if you can forgive me. I can. Her eyes brightened, just slightly. I forgive you for being wrong about David. I forgive you for not listening to me. I forgive you for bringing him into the company, but I can't do anything with that forgiveness. You're still the person who made those choices. You're still the person who valued his story over the truth. The brightness in her eyes dimmed. That's not forgiveness. Actually, it is. It's just not acceptance. I can forgive you and still walk away. That's what you don't understand. She stared at me for a long moment. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out a folded piece of paper. I found this when I was cleaning out David's things, she said, sliding it across the table. I thought you should know. I unfolded it. It was a letter, written in David's handwriting, dated 3 months before our divorce was finalized. I can get rid of her husband with the right proof. Just need to make him look like a traitor. Then she'll be fully mine. The company will be next. It was addressed to someone named RR, a name I didn't recognize. Who's RR? I don't know. Megan's voice broke. I don't know who he was working with, but there's someone else out there, Jack. Someone who helped him frame you. Someone who's still out there. I read the letter 3 times, feeling a chill work its way down my spine. This wasn't over. It had never been over. Emily drove me home that night, her face set in hard lines. She's lying, she said the second we were in the car. She's trying to hook you back in? Maybe. Or she's setting you up again. She's been manipulated before. She knows how this works. I leaned my head against the window. What if she's not lying? What if there really is someone else? Emily was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, then we find out who RR is, and we take them down the same way we took down David. 3 days after Megan's revelation, I was back in my office, staring at a name I couldn't place. Edit. Those 2 letters had been burning a hole in my brain since the cafe. David's letter didn't have a full signature, just those initials and the phrase, someone who helped him frame you. Megan had claimed she didn't know who it referred to, but her performance didn't quite land. Something in her voice when she said it was off. Emily sat across from me, laptop open, scrolling through a spreadsheet she'd made of everyone David had ever interacted with in a professional capacity. She'd gone full private investigator, pulling LinkedIn profiles, company directories, and even old-school yearbooks. I've got nothing, she admitted, pushing the laptop away. RR doesn't match anyone in his known network, and O executives with those initials, and O consultants, and O cousins. He's either using a fake name, or the person he was working with is carefully hidden. Or Megan's lying about not knowing who it is. Emily looked up sharply. You think she's protecting someone? I think she's protecting herself. She's always been good at that. She'll tell you just enough truth to make you trust her, then keep the real secret locked away. Then what do? We can't make her talk. She'll just lawyer up if we push. I lean back in my chair. We don't push. We wait. Whoever RR is, they're not going to stay quiet forever. David's in custody. His network is collapsing. Eventually, they'll make a mistake. Emily didn't look convinced, but she closed her laptop and nodded. Feeny. We wait, but I'm not going to stop looking. The waiting lasted 4 days. I used those days to focus on Phoenix Digital. The company was growing faster than I'd expected. Our talent roster was over 100 creators now, and we just signed our first major brand deal. The money was good, the work was satisfying, and for the first time in years, I felt like I was building something that mattered. But the RR question kept nagging at me. On the 4th day, Emily called me at 7 in the morning, her voice tight with barely contained energy. I found him. I sat up in bed, instantly awake. Who? RR's Richard Rooker. He used to work for my father's company. He was an accountant there for about 18 months, then he quit without notice. She paused. He's the one who processed David's consulting payments. Where is he now? Retired. Lives about 2 hours north of the city. He's been drawing a pension since he was 47. 47? That's early for retirement. Yeah, that's what I thought. I checked his financials. Public records. Nothing illegal, but he's got a house valued at almost $2 million on a pension that shouldn't support that. She paused again. Someone's been paying him. I was already pulling on clothes. Send me the address. The drive took longer than Emily's estimate, mostly because traffic was a nightmare. She'd insisted on coming with me, and I didn't argue. We spent the 2 hours going back and forth about what we'd say when we got there. You can't just accuse him, Emily kept saying. He's going to lawyer up the second we start threatening him. I'm not threatening him. I'm going to show him what I have and see how he reacts. That's still a threat. Emily, he helped set me up to take the fall for David's crimes. He's not a victim. He's a co-conspirator. She fell silent at that. I knew she was thinking the same thing I was, that this was the first real lead we'd had, and if we blew it, we might never find out who was really behind everything. Richard Rooker lived in a sprawling ranch house on a hill, the kind of place that would have taken years to afford on any normal salary. The lawn was manicured, the driveway had a new-looking SUV parked in it, and the windows were all dark. I knocked on the front door and waited. Nothing. I knocked again, harder this time. The curtain on the side window twitched. Someone was home, and they didn't want to answer. I know you're in there, Mr. Rooker. I kept my voice even. I'm not going to leave until I talk to you, and I'm not the kind of person you can ignore forever. A long pause, then the door unlocked and swung open, revealing a man who looked a good decade older than his listed age. His hair was thin, his face lined with worry, and his eyes were darting nervously from me to Emily and back again. What do you want? I held up David's letter. I want to know about RR. His face went pale. I don't know what you're talking about. Sure you do. You helped David Morrison transfer money through shell companies. You helped him frame me for espionage. And now David's in jail, and I want to know who else was involved. Richard took a step back, and I caught a flash of the handgun tucked into his waistband before he covered it with his shirt. I don't want any trouble. Then give me the truth. I kept my hands visible, my voice calm. Who else was working with David? Who else is still out there, waiting to make another move? Richard swallowed hard, his gaze fixed on the letter in my hand. You don't understand, he wasn't working alone, but he was the front, the person above him, they're not someone I can just name. Try. He was silent for a long moment, then, in a voice barely above a whisper, he said, it's someone inside the family, someone who stood to gain from David taking control, someone who wanted the company. Emily tensed beside me. Inside the family? Like one of my parents. Like your sister's new best friend. He pointed at Emily, with a shaking hand. Like the person who introduced David to your sister in the first place. A cold dread settled over me. Who? I said. Who introduced them? Richard's eyes met mine. Her father's executive assistant, Rachel Ramirez. The name hit Emily like a physical blow. Rachel. She took a step back, her face going white. But she's been with the company for 10 years. My dad trusts her with everything. She handles his personal finances, his calendar, his... She handles his personal finances, I repeated, which means she knows exactly how much money is moving where. I don't. Emily shook her head. She's not the type. She's just quiet, unassuming. Which makes her perfect. I turned back to Richard. Are you sure? Because if you're lying to cover for someone else. I'm not lying. His voice cracked slightly. Rachel approached me about setting up the shell accounts. She said David was restructuring and needed to pay consultants without going through company channels that I didn't know it was for something criminal until later, and by then I was in too deep. Why did you agree in the first place? Richard's face twisted with something like shame. She paid me a lot. She said it was a one-time thing, that I'd never have to do it again. But then she kept coming back, kept asking for more. Financial leverage, Emily murmured. She's been paying you to stay quiet. If I told anyone, she'd ruin me. She has enough on me to make sure I spend the rest of my life in prison. I stared at him for a long moment, trying to decide if he was telling the truth. You're going to have to come forward, I said at last. You're going to have to tell the authorities everything. Or I'm going to make sure your name surfaces anyway. Richard closed his eyes, nodded slowly. I'll do it. I'll give you everything I have. But you have to protect me from her. She's dangerous, Mr. Phoenix. I don't think you understand how dangerous. We left Richard's house in a daze. Emily drove, her hands white-knuckled on the wheel. Rachel, she kept muttering. I can't believe it's Rachel. People hide themselves well. You only see what they want you to see. I've known her since I was 15. She used to help me with my math homework. She taught me how to balance a checkbook. Emily's voice cracked. She was like a second aunt to me. Second aunts can be criminals, Emily. That's what makes them effective. She pulled the car over suddenly, slamming on the brakes so hard I lurched forward against the seatbelt. Jack. She turned to face me, eyes blazing. If she's been helping David this whole time, then she knows everything. She knows about the contract. She knows about the recordings. She knows we're coming. Probably. So we can't just walk in there and confront her. She'll have a plan. She's been planning this for years. I looked at her. What do you suggest? We go to my father first. He trusts her, but he doesn't know what she's been doing. If we show him the proof, he'll cut her off before she can react. It was a good plan. It was also a risky one. Your father's not exactly a fan of mine, I pointed out. He wanted me gone before the ink was dry on the divorce papers. He wants the truth more than he wants to hold a grudge. Trust me on this. We drove to her father's estate that same evening. The sun was setting, and the sky was streaked with shades of orange and red that made the whole property look almost nostalgic. Daniel Foster, Emily's father, was surprised to see us. He wasn't surprised enough to invite us in gracefully. He'd always been the type to keep people at a distance. But when Emily told him we had proof of a conspiracy inside his own company, he let us in. We spread out the documents on his coffee table. Richard's testimony, the Shell Company records, the emails, the dates and amounts, all lining up in a neat, damning picture. Daniel stared at it all in silence for a long time. Rachel, he said finally, my assistant, the woman I trusted with my personal finances, my legal affairs. The same one who's been working with David to dismantle your business, I confirmed. She's been patient. She's been quiet, but she's been doing this for years. Daniel looked up, his eyes narrowed. Why would she do this? What does she stand to gain? Money, mostly. Emily had found the financial trail we'd been missing, a series of small but consistent payments from the Shell Company to an account in Rachel's name. She's been skimming from David's bribes. He didn't even know she was taking a cut. David Morrison. Daniel said the name like it tasted bad. That idiot who made me look foolish to the board. Yes, the same one who would have dismantled everything you built if I hadn't stopped him. Daniel met my eyes. For the first time, there was something like respect in his gaze. What do you need from me? He asked. I need you to call Rachel. Tell her you want to discuss something sensitive at your office tomorrow morning. Don't tell her what it's about. Just make sure she shows up. Daniel nodded slowly. And then we let her walk into the trap she helped build for everyone else. That night, Emily stayed at my penthouse again. I'd gotten used to her presence by now. Her laugh, her energy, the way she'd crash on my couch and act like she belonged there. But tonight was different. She was quiet, contemplative, her phone silent on the table beside her. I keep thinking about Richard, she said softly. He was just a regular guy who made a bad choice. And now his whole life is ruined because Rachel got her hooks into him. People make choices, Emily. He could have stopped at any point. It didn't feel like a choice to him. He was scared. Rachel made him scared. I didn't have an answer for that. Fear was a powerful weapon, and Rachel had been using it for years. Tomorrow's going to change everything, Emily said. One way or another. Probably. Jack. Her hand found mine on the armrest. Whatever happens tomorrow, I just want you to know, I'm not going anywhere. I looked at her for a long moment. In the low light of the living room, she looked almost fragile. Me neither, I said. It was a promise I didn't know if I could keep.